Good day, everyone. Welcome to today's lecture on Chapter 14, where we will be diving into two critical systems in operations management. We will be discussing material requirements planning, which is commonly known as the MRP, and the enterprise resource planning, which we call ERP. These systems are fundamental to how modern manufacturing and even service organizations do their planning, scheduling, and controlling their operations. Now, by the end of our session today, you will understand not just what these systems are, but how they work together to create efficient, responsive operations. Okay, so let's get started. Before we dive into the content, let me walk you through what we will be covering today. I'd like you to focus on your screens right now. As you can see, we have actually a total of 4 learning objectives. The first one, we will be exploring what MRP or the Material Requirements Planning is all about. Then we will look at ERP or the Enterprise Resource Planning, and we will also understand how it differs from MRP. And the third one is we will be discussing the crucial distinction between dependent as well as independent demand. This is really fundamental to understanding why MRP works the way it does. And moving on, our fourth objective is learning how to develop a product structure, which is essentially a roadmap showing how a product is built. Now let's begin with our first topic, the material requirements planning. What exactly is material requirements planning? At its core, MRP is a manufacturing planning and inventory control system designed to actually optimize production processes by systematically managing materials and components. Now, think of it as the brain behind your production schedule. What does MRP do? Well, it actually determines three critical things, okay? The first one is what materials are needed. The second one is how much quantity is required. And the third one is the timing of when orders should be placed. Okay? So it does this based on your production schedules, the bill of materials, and your current inventory levels. Now, the ultimate goal is to ensure that materials are available exactly when you need them for production while maintaining minimal inventory levels. This balance is crucial because too much inventory ties up capital. But you also have to take note that too little causes production delays. Now, looking at the key features listed on your screen, you can see that the MRP handles production scheduling. It is deciding when to make it, when to make what. And it actually manages inventory, ensuring you have the right amount of materials. And it also processes bills of materials, which we will discuss in detail shortly. And it also manages purchase orders, telling you when to buy from suppliers, and finally, it tracks lead times and how long it takes to get materials from suppliers or to produce components internally. With that foundation in MRP, let us now look at its bigger brother, which is the ERP or the Enterprise Resource Planning. While MRP focuses specifically on production and materials, the ERP, on the other hand, actually takes a much broader view. When you say ERP, it is actually a comprehensive business management software that actually integrates and automates core business processes across multiple departments within an organization. Now, the key difference between the key difference here is the integration. ERP provides a single, unified database that actually collects and organizes data from various business activities. So this means everyone in the organization, from the finance to HR and also to production and going to sales, is actually working from the same information in real time. Now, the real-time information flow enables informed decision making across the entire enterprise. So, I want you to focus on the listed features on your screen right now. Yes, ERP includes production planning and inventory control. And that is the MRP, and that's the MRP part we just discussed. Okay? But it goes much further. Okay? It actually handles the financial management, which is tracking all your money flows. It also manages human resources, which includes your payroll, your attendance, and your benefits. It also oversees supply chain management. It is actually connecting you with suppliers and distributors. Now, your customer relationship management actually helps you track and serve your customers better. And you also get business intelligence tools for analyzing data, plus quality management systems. So you might be wondering, how do MRP and ERP actually compare? So let's look at that next. So this is a really important distinction to understand. Now, I want you to focus on the side wherein we have the MRP. MRP focuses specifically on production planning and inventory control. When you are using MRP, you are actually asking, what do we need to make our product? And MRP answers three fundamental questions. The first one is, what materials do we need? Followed by, when do we need them? And how much of each material is required? So it's very focused, very specific to manufacturing. Okay, now I want you to focus on the side of the ERP. So these ERP actually encompasses the entire organization's operations, including but actually not limited to the functions of MRP. So when you implement ERP, you are asking a much broader question. Like, how do we manage our entire business? And ERP answers everything about the business, such as finance, the HR, the sales, the production, the distribution, and actually everything. Okay? And here is an important point. The ERP can be considered an evolution of your MRP. So companies typically started with MRP systems to manage their production, and as technology evolved and businesses needed more integration, MRP evolved into MRP2 and eventually into the comprehensive ERP systems that we have today. So it is actually providing a more holistic approach to business management through integrated systems and processes. So you do not have disconnected software for each department. Everything talks to everything else. Okay? Now that we understand that these systems uh, now that we understand these two systems, the MRP and the ERP, we need to understand a fundamental concept that makes MRP work, okay? The difference between the dependent and the independent demand. So the effectiveness of MRP and ERP systems actually relies heavily on understanding and managing two distinct types of demand in your business operations. So you have there the independent demand and the dependent demand. So this distinction is absolutely crucial. Okay, so let us start with independent demand. Okay, that is shown on your screen right now. Now, independent demand comes directly from customer orders or market forecasts. So it is not related to the demand for other items. Now, for example, how many smartphones will customers buy next month? We don't know for certain. Okay, we have to forecast it. Now, we look at historical data, the market trends, and make educated guesses, but we cannot calculate it precisely. Now, it's independent because it comes from external market forces. Now, the dependent demand, this is where MRP really shines. Dependent demand is demand that is derived from independent demand. So it is actually directly related to or calculated from other items. Now, here's the beautiful thing. So, dependent demand can be calculated precisely using bills of materials. Now, if you know you need to make 100 smartphones and each smartphone requires exactly one battery, then you will know for sure with absolute certainty that you also need 100 batteries. So, you do not need forecasting, you do not need guessing. It is a mathematical calculation. So, this might sound abstract. Now, let me give you a concrete example that everyone can relate to. So let's take a restaurant example because food is something we all understand, right? Now, I want you to look at the independent demand items, okay, on the left. Now, these are finished dishes on the menu, like a sisig plate, ready to serve items like soft drinks, and complete meals like the value meals. Now, when a restaurant manager asks, how many sisig plates will customer order today? That is independent demand. They have to forecast they have to forecast based on the day of the week, the weather past patterns, but they cannot know for certain. Okay? Now, look at that dependent demand items. Okay, focus on those dependent demand items. These are the raw ingredients for sisig. Once you know you need to prepare, let us say 50 sisig plates, then suddenly everything becomes calculable. Okay? The pork needed depends on the number of sisig orders. Now, if each plate needs 200 grams of pork and you are making 50 plates, so you need exactly 10 kilograms of pork, right? Now, the onions depends on the number of sisig orders as well. So the eggs, the seasonings, so everything is dependent on that master number, which tells us how many sisig plates. Okay, now this is exactly how MRP works in manufacturing. The finished product is independent demand, so you forecast how many you sell. But every component, every part, every raw material becomes dependent demand. So you calculate it precisely from your production schedule. Now, understanding this concept is fundamental because it determines how you manage inventory. Now, independent demand items need forecasting and safety stock. Dependent demand it's Dependent demand items need calculation and proper scheduling. And to do that calculation, we need something which is called a product structure. Okay? So let us look at that now, the product. So what is a product structure? Now, as you can see on your screen right now, a product structure is a hierarchical representation that illustrates the relationship between a final product and all its components, including the sub-assemblies, the parts, and the raw materials. Now think of it as a family tree for your product, showing what makes up what. Okay? Now, a product structures are organized in levels, and this is very systematic. At level zero, we have the end item. So this represents actually the finished product, that level 0. And this is the highest level in the structure. It is what customers ultimately receive. Now, in our example that we will use throughout the discussion, this is the complete sisig plate, okay? Now, moving down to level 1, we have the major components here. So these are the primary elements that directly contribute to the end item or to your level 0 or to your finished product. So it is actually the first tier of breakdown. The critical assemblies or main components for our sisig plate example. Okay, so this includes things like sizzling portion itself, the rice, the egg, the calamansi, and the garnish. Okay, it is actually everything you see when the plate arrives at your table. Now let us continue breaking this down to see the deeper levels. So continuing with our levels, level 2 represents the subcomponents. These are elements that constitute the major components, okay? So it is the secondary tier of breakdown. So these are processed or prepared materials. Now in our sisig example, this would be things like the processed pork, the prepared onions, the chili, and the seasonings mix. So notice these are not raw ingredients yet. Okay, these are not the raw ingredients yet. They have been prepared or processed in some way. And finally, let us go to level 3. Now, when we say level 3, we have here the raw materials. So these are the base ingredients or materials. Now, the lowest level of the structure, this is the level 3. So these are your fundamental inputs that you purchase from your suppliers. Now for our sisig, this actually includes like the salt, the pepper, and the soy sauce. Okay? So the basic ingredients that you buy and then process into your level 2 components. Now, you might be wondering why we go through all this trouble of breaking things down into levels. So let me show you the actual example to make this crystal clear or very, very clear. Okay, so here's our sisig plate example broken down systematically. Now, at the top level, this is your level 0, we have the final product. Okay, meaning the complete sisig plate that we serve to our customers. So this is what generates revenue. Okay, so at the first level here, we have the main parts. So these are the things you actually see on the plate when it is served. So you've got the sizzling sisig portion here. Okay, we also have the rice, the egg, the calamansi, and also the garnish. Okay, so now at the second level, this is the level 2 here. So we break down the components further. Now let us just focus on the sizzling sisig portion from the level 1 because these are the components of this sizzling sisig portion. Okay? So what makes up that sizzling sisig portion? So it is made up of these items. We have the chopped pork, we have the chopped onions for the flavor and texture, of course. Then we have the chili, and then we have the seasonings. Okay? So you have to take note that these one in here, your pork, your onions, your chili, and your mixed seasonings, they are not raw materials anymore. Okay? But they are not still or not yet the final product. So let's go one level deeper. Let's proceed with level 3. Okay, so at the third level, the level 3, we actually finally reach the basic ingredients. Okay, so in here, as you can see, please focus on the pointer. You can actually see the raw materials and the seasonings. Okay, now looking at our mixed seasonings from level 2 a while ago. Okay, so it is what goes into that. Okay, it tells you what goes into that product from level 2. So you actually have the salt, the pepper, and the soy sauce. Okay, so these are the items you actually purchase from your suppliers in their basic form. These are the items. Okay, so you do not make your salt, right? You buy it. Same with the pepper as well as the soy sauce. Now, why is this product structure important? Okay, I'd like you to focus on this part. Okay, so a product structure is important because it helps us to know exactly what we need. So there is no guessing. It also shows us how much of each ingredient is actually required. And if you need to make, let's say for example, 100 sisig plates, and each requires 10 grams of salt for that sisig plate, then you already have an idea that for you to be able to make 100 sisig plates, you actually need exactly 1 kilogram of salt. Okay? So it makes ordering supplies easier because you can calculate everything precisely. It helps track inventory and you know what you have and what you actually need. And it makes it easier to cost your product. So you can add up the cost of every single ingredient to determine your true cost. So the way to think about this is simple, as shown in the as shown here in this code. Okay, so for you to understand better, I hope this code will help you. To make this the top, okay, I need this. So these are the level 1. Okay, the top, or we call this level 0. Okay, I'll read continually. Okay, to make this, which refers to level 0, I need this, which refers to level 1, which need this, which refers to level 2, which need this, which refers to level 3. Okay, so as you can see, it's hierarchical. Now, let me show you on the next slide how we do this in a visual way, okay, to present it in a structured way. So here is the complete product structure diagram for our sisig example, okay? And this really brings everything together. So let us focus on the top. This is the top, your level 0. So we have at the top, this is your final product, the sisig plate. And below that level 0 is your level 1, okay? And we see all the main components which actually what we see on the plate. So we have the sizzling sisig portion, we have the rice, we have the egg, one egg. Okay, as you can see, this is the quantity. One sizzling portion, 1 cup of rice, 1 egg, and 2 calamansi, and then we have a garnish. Okay, and then now follow the sizzling sisig portion down to level 2. Okay, in level 2 we have here this portion. We have here the processed pork, the prepared onions, which is the processed pork is 200 grams, the prepared onions is 30 grams, the seasonings mix, and also we have 5 grams of chili. Okay, so this shows the processing flow from the raw materials to the final product. So if we follow this seasoning mix down, then we go to level 3. Okay, what is in this seasoning mix? So these are your raw materials. Okay, it is composed of 5 grams of salt, 3 grams of pepper, and 15 ml of soy sauce. Okay, so as you can see, it is more structured in this way. So this is the beauty of doing the product structure. Okay, so that's it. Now that you understand product structures conceptually, so it is easier for you to apply on your company study. And I want you to apply these. You also make a product structure for your bestseller product in the company that you have studied, or that in the company that you are studying. I just want to sum it up. The product structure of the sisig plate, okay, it shows us the processing flow from the raw materials going to final product, or from level 3, which is the raw materials, going to your level 0, to your final product. Wherein, as you have seen a while ago in the previous slide, the level 1 is your main assembled components, or referring it to sisig plate, these are level 1 are the items that you see on your plate. And then the level 2 is your processed or prepared items. And your level 3, of course, is your raw materials. So let us work through a real MRP problem together. So here is the scenario. Speaker Kits Incorporated, let us read together please, packages high-fidelity components for mail order. Now they have a top-of-the-line speaker kit which is called Awesome. Well, we will call it item A. Okay? Now, pay attention to the structure here because it gets a bit complex. Okay. Each Awesome speaker kit A requires 2 units of B and 3 units of C. So that's the first level. And going deeper, each B consists of 2 Ds and 2 Es. And each C has 2 Fs and 2 Es. And each F includes 2 Ds and 1 G. There is a humorous note here about purchasers requiring hearing aids within 3 years and a court case about structural damage to a dorm. So clearly, these are very powerful speakers, right? But more importantly, notice the last sentence here. The demand for B, C, D, E, F, and G is completely dependent on the master production schedule for A and the Awesome, which is the Awesome speaker kits. So this is dependent demand in action. Now, your task is I want us together to create a product structure based on what is given. Okay? So let's see the answer. Okay, so for our example, this is actually the complete product structure tree for the Awesome Speaker Kit. Okay, and this is where we need to pay very careful attention, okay, to an important concept which is called the low-level coding. Okay, so let me walk you through this diagram step by step. Now at level 0, this is here, kindly focus on my pointer. We have, as you can see, A. Okay, this is your final product, which is the Awesome Speaker Kit, which is designated as A. Now moving down to level 1, we see B with a with a quantity of 2, which is inside this parenthesis. This is actually referred as the quantity. And we have C with a quantity of 3. Okay, so these numbers tell us that each A requires 2 B's and 3 C's. Okay, so now let us move to level 2. So in level 2, this is where things get interesting. Because as you can see under B here, we have E, this one, with a quantity of 2, the one in parentheses, meaning each B needs 2 E's. And then under C, we also have E with a quantity of 2. Okay? Now I want you to notice that E appears twice at level 2. Once under B, right? And once under C. So we also see we also see this F under C with a quantity of 2, right? So let's proceed now to level 3. So level 3, under F, this one, all of these are level 3. Under F, we have D with a quantity of 2, the one in parentheses. And we have here G with a quantity of 1. But here's the critical observation. Now, if you look at the diagram, D here, okay, that one, okay, it is circled in red. This one in level 3, okay. And then, as you can see, there, as you can see, this one, okay, I annotated it as low-level coding. Why is this so? Because D appears in 2 places in our structure, okay? So it appears at level 2 under B. Actually, it appears at level 2 under B. And it also appears here at level 3 under F. Okay? Actually, if we will not apply this low-level coding, this D really should be written here, right? But because of low-level coding, that's why D is here. Okay? So this one brings us to the concept explained here on this side. Okay? Now, low-level coding is actually a convention that assigns the item to the lowest level at which it appears anywhere in the product structure. So that's why instead of writing D here at level 2, we extended it to the bottom because there is still D here under F, which belongs to level 3. Okay? So, as you can see, A is coded at level 0. B, so let's summarize, okay, at level 1 and C at level 1. But here's the key. D is coded at level 3, E at level 2, F at level 2 as well, and G at level 3. So even though D appears at level 2, because as what I have said, it should have been written here under B, we code it at level 3 because that is the lowest level where it appears in the entire structure. Why? Because you still have D here under F, okay? Now, the same logic applies to E here. It appears multiple times at level 2, so it's coded at level 2. Okay, so why does that matter? Okay, well, this actually ensures consistent handling of components when calculating material requirements. So it is important for MRP calculations to prevent confusion and ensure that all the materials are properly accounted for regardless of which parent assembly needs it. Okay, when you say parent assembly, the one at the top. Okay, so let's say the parent of D and E is B. Okay, so that's the parent assembly term. Now, when the MRP system runs, it processes all the items at their lowest level, which means it collects all the requirements for that item before calculating what needs to be ordered. So these actually prevents duplicate ordering and ensures accurate total requirements. Now, I just want you to think of it this way. If we calculated these requirements at level 2 and then again at level 3, we might confuse ourselves or the system. So that's why by coding D at level 3 only, we ensure that all requirements for D, whether it's needed for this parent B or needed for F, are calculated together at one time. It will give us the correct total quantity needed. Okay? So this concept of low-level coding is fundamental to how MRP system works. And you will also see its importance as we continue. Okay? Or you will see its importance as you apply this to your real company study. Okay? So that's it. Let's proceed. All right, everyone. That's the wrap of our discussion of Chapter 14 on MRP and ERP. So today, we have explored how MRP and ERP systems work together in order to optimize manufacturing as well as business operations. We have also learned to distinguish between the dependent and independent demand. And we also learned to develop product structures with proper hierarchical levels and also understood the importance of low-level coding for accurate material calculations. Now, these concepts are fundamental to modern operations management, and as you move forward, you will actually appreciate how they apply across various industries, actually from manufacturing to services. Okay, so I want you to review all the materials that we have covered today, and thank you for your attention. I will see you on our next meeting. Have a great day, everyone.